All right, let's dive into something pretty interesting today. Dixon Technologies, they're becoming a pretty major player in India's electronics boom, and we're going deep on their Q2FY24-25 earnings call summary.
Yeah.
And I got to say, their recent performance, it's really something else.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. What we're seeing with Dixon is a company that's really in the perfect spot, to take advantage of India becoming this global electronics manufacturing hub.
Yeah, and to put some numbers to that,
Yeah.
they just posted 133% revenue growth, which is huge, reaching a massive Rs, 11,528 crores. And a big chunk of this is coming from, surprise, surprise, mobile phones.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The mobile phones and EMS segment, EMS stands for Electronics Manufacturing Services, by the way. They saw a massive 235% revenue surge. It really shows you how India's middle class is growing, smartphone use is going up, and the government's Make in India push, it's all playing a role, and Dixon's right there capitalizing on it. They're making smartphones for brands like Motorola and companies under the Transishan Group, churning out something like 2.7 to 2.8 million units every month.
Wow, that's a lot of phones. But what I find really interesting is that they're not just laser focused on mobile phones. They're branching out, diversifying into other product categories, which is a smart move when you think about the ups and downs of the electronics market.
Oh, for sure, yeah. It's a very deliberate move to go from being just a mobile phone maker to being a bigger, more diversified player in electronics. Now, their consumer electronics and appliances segment did have a little dip because of some pressure on LED TV volumes, which is probably reflecting what's happening in the wider industry.
Right. Makes sense. So how are they doing in other parts of that segment?
Well, first off, they're killing it with refrigerators. 90% capacity utilization, refrigerators at 90%. Sounds like they're staying cool under pressure. And on top of that, their fully automatic washing machines saw a 50% volume jump.
Okay, so they're doing great with fridges and washing machines. What about their other segments?
Yeah, they're seeing growth in lighting and telecom, too. In lighting, the demand for those energy-efficient LED solutions is going up, driven by government initiatives and consumers becoming more aware. And in telecom, they're well-placed to benefit from the 5G rollout and the increasing demand for internet-connected devices. So yeah, they're really playing the field.
That's a great point. They're not putting all their eggs in one basket. And speaking of diversification, management seems pretty optimistic about continued revenue growth, especially in mobile phones and IT hardware in the next couple of years. But what really blew me away was their backward integration strategy.
Yeah, their backward integration plans are pretty ambitious. They're aiming to manufacture 27% of their bill of materials, or BOM internally, which basically means all the parts that make up their products.
So they're bringing a big chunk of their component manufacturing in-house. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, this is where Dixon gets even more interesting. This move lets them rely less on global supply chains and have more control over their production. It gives them more flexibility, could potentially reduce costs, and helps them avoid risks tied to disruptions in global supply chains. And they're expecting a boost from a government program called the PLI scheme.
Can you tell me more about the PLI scheme and how it might benefit Dixon?
Sure. The Production-Linked Incentive, or PLI scheme, it's a government initiative offering financial incentives to companies that want to boost domestic manufacturing. It's a big move by the Indian government to encourage local production and depend less on imports. For Dixon, this scheme means a significant cost advantage, making them more competitive in both domestic and international markets.
So it sounds like they're not just riding the wave, they're shaping it with strategic decisions like this backward integration.
Exactly. It puts them in a really good position for the future, especially with the expected growth in the Indian electronics market.
Now, it can't all be smooth sailing, right? What are some of the challenges they might face moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, every business faces challenges, right?
Yeah.
The LED TV market's got some headwinds, and they might see some ups and downs with mobile phone sales depending on the season. Could even be a dip in mobile phone volumes in Q3. Though they're expecting things to pick back up in Q4. Rising interest rates are something to keep an eye on, too. It's affecting businesses across the board. The key is how well Dixon manages all of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Will be interesting to see how they handle those challenges. But they're also making some really exciting moves strategically, like the iSmart 2 acquisition. That's done now, right?
Yep, that's a big one. They're bringing in some serious expertise in smartphone design and manufacturing with that acquisition. It's a real boost to their capabilities in a key growth area.
And I was reading about their partnership with HKC for display manufacturing. What's the latest there?
They've actually locked in the location for that. And production's set to start in the first or second quarter of the next fiscal year. It's a pretty significant move, especially with everyone wanting to diversify display manufacturing globally.
It sounds like they're not just making phones, they're making the screens for them. And maybe even for other devices.
Exactly. They're even looking into partnerships for manufacturing displays, for industrial use, institutions, even automotive applications. They're thinking big, aiming to be that one-stop shop for all sorts of electronic components.
That's amazing. So from kind of dominating the mobile phone space, Dixon's branching out strategically, aiming to be that go-to place for electronics manufacturing in India. Anything else big in the pipeline?
Well, there's one more thing you might find interesting. It has to do with laptops.
Okay, now I'm intrigued.
So get this. 4 major global laptop brands, HP, Asus, Acer, and Lenovo. They're all jumping on the Make in India train, and Dixon's going to be a major player in bringing laptop production to India.
Wow, that's huge. It's a big step forward for India's ambitions in electronics manufacturing.
Oh yeah, it's a game changer, not just for Dixon, but for the whole Indian electronics manufacturing scene. It shows there's growing confidence in India's ability to make those high-quality, complex electronics on a global scale.
So to recap, Dixon Technologies is coming off a stellar quarter, driven by that impressive performance in mobile phones.
And they're not slowing down. They're setting themselves up for continued growth in India's dynamic electronics manufacturing sector by diversifying what they offer, investing in backward integration, and forming key partnerships.
What do you think Dixon Technologies' success says about the future of global electronics manufacturing?
Yeah, it really does feel like a shift, from made in China to made in India, and Dixon's right at the front of that movement.
It is. And their success, it could totally encourage other companies to do the same, which would lead to, a more diverse and resilient global electronic supply chain.
Exactly.
This is what I love about these deep dives. We start with a company's earnings report and end up talking about the future of global manufacturing.
Yeah, it's all connected. That's the thing about really understanding how business works. Each decision, each partnership, every innovation, it tells a story about the company's journey and its impact on the world, really.
So for anyone looking for a company that's not just talking the talk, but walking the walk when it comes to India's manufacturing goals, Dixon Technologies is definitely one to watch.
Yeah, they're like a little snapshot of a much bigger trend. And their story's just getting started. You got to keep an eye on their moves, their partnerships, their innovations, because they might just be giving us a peek into the future of electronics manufacturing.
That wraps up our deep dive into Dixon Technologies.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see how a company can not just ride the wave of an economic boom, but really shape it too.
For sure. Their story really shows the power of making strategic decisions, adapting, and being committed to innovation.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.